trying to play electric guitar in the next room. I'm like, I'm recording podcast. You can't play electric guitar in here right now. So I had to help him find his headphones.
Oh, good. I was going to say, does he have headphones?
Yeah, he does.
Oh, good.
um, but yeah, no, he's like in this music camp right now, and it's really cute. And Friday he's gonna play a little show, and he's lead guitar on 4 of the 5 songs that they're
Hmm.
doing, and he's really excited about it. It's very cute.
Did you mention
Um,
he's in the older kid class? So
he
he's
is.
the lead guitar in the older kid class. He's like a musical prodigy.
He's like a little 9-year old kid like playing with a bunch of like 13, 14, 15 year olds. It's so cute. But he doesn't like me saying that. He's like, Mom, I'm not the youngest. He's not the youngest. He's just the most talented young one. No, but we're all equally special, so I shouldn't say that. uh, just kidding. Okay, I'm a little loopy today.
Hmm.
Astrology. Astrology is a little bit fucking insane right now.
I know
Um,
I can't really get the 15th off my mind a little bit.
yeah.
It's like going
I
to,
mean,
I know it's already sort of moving in that direction, but
it's underway. Like, we have, so we talked about this extensively in the last podcast. And we've got Mars applying to Uranus. He's about 3 degrees away right now. So Mars is at like 23 degrees of Taurus. And Uranus is currently conjoined to Algol, um, which we talked about in the last podcast. But just to kind of recap, Algol represents the severed head of Medusa in the Western traditions. So I think the easiest way to sum up Algol is it's a fixed star that is particularly rageful and violent and represents this sort of like both the anger, rage, and sorrow of people who have been unjustly slain or cut off from their power, and also the sort of violence and sort of patriarchal arrogance that would take unjustly. So it can represent both processing rage, processing anger, expressing anger, but also extraordinarily violent and ghastly acts of violence. So we've got Uranus, the planet of profound disruption and power, sitting on top of Algol. And we've got Mars sort of slowly and painfully approaching that degree. So now it's Thursday the 11th, and the 15th is when they actually conjoin. And Mars pretty much hangs out in the orb of Algol for the whole week. And in fact, on Tuesday the 16th, which is what I'm kind of really concerned about, is the moon will be in Scorpio. And sometimes what happens is when the moon comes into contact with a powerful conjunction, that's when we feel it. And Scorpio is opposite Taurus. So this is all happening at the late degrees of Taurus. And then the 16th, the moon will oppose that. So it's kind of like the moon will will spotlight it essentially. So yeah, that in combination with the Venus opposition to Pluto, and then kind of bookended by what will be the Sun's opposition to Pluto, sort of at the end of next week. It's a fucking intense moment for sure. It is. It's weird because it is like we talked about last time. It's not like it sums up the astrology of the moment. It doesn't. This Mars Uranus conjunction on Algol is sort of separate from everything else that's happening in the sky. but it does feel like a moment of kind of like clearing, um, pain, rage. Like the better possible reading of it in our personal lives would be like release, like releasing a huge amount of pain, anguish, anger, like sort of letting it out, and then sort of clearing a space so that we can move forward with like intuition, um, and in like more embodied like alignment with our intentions. But that's like, that's the best possible, manifestation of it. I don't know, what will happen in the world. There's just many active ongoing horrors already. So yeah, it's not great. Um, Someone was telling me earlier, like, wow, it feels like everyone is really tense. I'm like, yeah, yeah, little bit. Um,
Yeah, I mean, we were kind of seeing that as early, like earlier, already this month,
yeah.
since like the beginning of the month, which I assumed was related.
Do you have any sense of this weekend or what might come up or how? I mean, we talked about last podcast. We talked about how this is a really good time to do kind of like death meditation.
Hmm.
And one of our close friends actually is going to offer a death meditation on
Hmm.
Sunday.
Hmm.
Um, but maybe I'll let you speak to why it's
Oh,
kind of a good
shoot.
time to do that.
So this is Paige Hetherington, who also does the Tibetan healing ceremonies. She is a death doula and an acupuncturist, as well as a choma. So, um, these three kind of modalities really blend in really well together, and it's nice that we get to work with her on all of them. And yeah, she heard our podcast and was like, "Yeah, let's do a death meditation this weekend." So I'm squeezing it in on Sunday, and I think anyone can register. Um, I've talked a little bit about why I like death meditation, so I'm probably going to be repeating myself, but um, it's just incredibly clarifying and refreshing. Even and it is emotional, the way that she leads it is pretty not violently graphic, but um, kind of brings you through the physical process of letting go and imagining what it's going to be like to be losing consciousness and losing your breath and losing your ability to discern who's around you and what's going on and all of that. And I think that there's something very, very powerful about moving into that place and seeing what comes up for you. You
Right.
know, is it fear? Is there panic? Is there peace? Is there regret? Um, who do you hope is there? Who are the people that you both love and feel a sense of connection or trust that they are going to be present for you,
Yeah.
and help you when you can no longer do that for yourself. Um, but I think, that the intensity of it, I think, is a really positive and exercise to move through because it can help us feel more courageous in other elements of our life as well as in that moment, which I think is important. But in relationship to the astrology that's coming up, um, part of it was that all the planets in Gemini, right? And having this
Right.
surge of busyness and almost kind of feeling lost in it and maybe not totally understanding why you're doing, getting to a point you're like, why am I even doing this? What am I doing? Why am I doing this? Why do I feel obligated to do this? Do I really even enjoy this? Do I really like this life or, whatever it is, which is normal when you just start to get burned out, even if it is something that you like. But and then the other reason I think is what you just were talking about with the algal, the Mars, the Mercury, or the not Mercury, Uranus, the Venus and Pluto. I mean, all these things are going to bring up, um, grief and anger and rage potentially. And so
Right.
it's a nice way of, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Right. No, I was just agreeing with you.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, yeah. Um, so it's nice to put those things in perspective, I guess, to kind of look at
Yeah.
them in the long view of your life and decide, not, decide, but kind of have the opportunity to process uh, the value of um, working through those experiences or the value of not attaching to those experiences. It could be one or another. Like, is this something that you really want to carry forward into the end and that you feel good about bearing the weight of? Or is this something that you really want to purge now and then just,
Mm-hmm.
and then slowly let go of as you go? Um, just informing how you want to live your life and what's important to you and what you want your attention to be on. All of these things tend to come up for me during a death meditation. And it can also be very validating. You can be like, oh, I'm on the right track. I've, there's just a huge amount of gratitude that can come into like, oh, I have really great friends. I have, done a lot of the things that I was hoping that I would do, or, I feel like I've overcome obstacles or hurdles in my life that I'm glad I'm not carrying to that moment, or people in my life that I'm glad will not be there in that
Yeah.
moment anymore because I've created new opportunities for myself. So yeah, so if the astrology is going to be intense anyway, you might as well do something intense. Um, that's one of the best ways of
Yeah.
kind of fulfilling that karmic need is like, well, if it's going to be something intense, let's do something not harmful, right? Like something that's not going to hurt me, not going to hurt anybody else, but something that's going to be emotionally or mentally or physically intense.
Immense. Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is about as intense as it gets. And it's interesting because the period that's coming up. So we talked about this last time, but it's sort of like we're going through this little dark portal with the Pluto oppositions and then the Algol Mars Uranus conjunction. We're going through this little dark portal, and then as soon as Mars moves into Gemini, which I think happens on the 20th, maybe. Let me look that up because that's a very significant. Um, that's a significant day because it does kind of that shift of Mars into Gemini is really kind of like a chapter marker of the year. Okay, yeah. So midday, July 20th, Mars moves into Gemini. And that's really important because it activates the Jupiter Saturn square that's been happening by sign since June. But this will be the first major activation of it. And Jupiter and Saturn, they kind of like are like big level time keepers, right? We sort of mark the astrological eras by Jupiter and Saturn's cycles. So, whenever they square or conjoin or oppose, we consider those to be markers of time passing. Um, and they kind of represent times when we get drawn deeper into the larger story of our life, Uh, like, who am I? Where am I going? Like, what is this all about? Those bigger questions. And they also kind of tend to represent moments when we have to either recommit or shift or make a change or make a choice. Um, And this is going to be especially powerful for anybody who's a mutable rising sign, so Gemini, Sag, uh, Virgo. Oh my god, my brain. Uh, Gemini, Sagittarius, Virgo, Pisces, um, or anyone who has like luminaries in those signs. Um, it's kind of like, yeah, Mars is gonna activate this period of like, okay, where time to make some important choices. And so not only is it going to be a busy period, but it's kind of like a critical window of time, this July 20th to early September. So using this dark portal to kind of reconnect to our values or let some of the more challenging or weighted or unproductive emotions and baggage that we're carrying, letting that stuff fall away or giving it up or surrendering it, can help us move into this critical window with more clarity
Hmm.
and purpose. If that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Oh, yeah. I think it's a great, I mean, I feel like this is really what I value most about astrology, is looking at these kind of moments and being like,
Yeah.
oh, how can, like, when you can prepare for a moment. Um,
Yeah.
that's really nice to be able, I mean, it happens either way. So you don't have to do anything. But if you have something big that you are looking to, like, when should I start this officially? When should I plan this date? There's a lot of really positive ways that you can use it to set yourself up for like later success if you want to. And there's so many moments like this that you don't have to take advantage of any of them. You know, it's definitely not necessary. But I agree with kind of the momentum of this year. The idea of having like another kind of big turning point moment, for me at least, feels very overwhelming.
Yeah.
And so it would be really nice to feel like, okay, no, what is my default? I just want I just want the luxury of defaulting right now in this moment. I've already figured out what that is
Well,
because the rest of it's
do
been so
you
much.
do you see it as a sort of like um let's say end of July to early September? Does it feel a little more weighted or more significant to you in terms of like the choices we'll have to make
I
from your
think
perspective?
I mean, it's not going to be like life changing
Yeah.
necessarily,
No,
but
it's
it does
the
look,
stream of your story. Yeah.
oh yeah, but it does look like a lot of decisions will have to be made that have more long-term effect, if that makes sense, like
Right.
more than we've had to make for this. So for a lot of this, I mean, this year I just feel like I've been running along a roller coaster track trying to catch up to the cars, and I keep thinking like, oh, I'm just gonna make it to the cars and I'm gonna jump in and then I'm just gonna ride out the rest of this ride. It's gonna be fast, but I'll ride it out. And in this month I'm like, nope, I'm not catching the cars. I'm just gonna be running the whole track indefinitely. That's just what we're doing now. That's how it sort of feels.
Yeah.
But even with that, there's kind of this lightness to it, this kind of like bounding between things where I think is in the fall, it's going to be more like, oh, we have to sign a lease. Oh, I have to figure out where my kid is going to go to school for the next year.
Right.
Oh, I gotta, it's like suddenly you've got to make bigger commitments. And again, it might not be forever life-changing stuff, but it probably will be a time where you have to be, kind of look into, instead of just riding the kind of wave of this year so far that has been very active, it'll be like,
Yeah.
and now it's your turn to decide how active and in what ways the next 9 months will be. So it will
Yeah.
be really, so I think that recentering before then would probably just feel really nice.
Yeah, this is the moment to recenter for sure. It's just like a more of an extreme recentering than a spa. It's not a spa recentering.
No.
It's a, yeah, it's a serious recentering. But yeah, no, we'll talk about this more too as we get there. But this Jupiter Saturn square that's going to happen in the middle of August that we're going to be building up towards starting the 20th. I think they actually square as Mars conjoins Jupiter. So it's
Hmm.
like Jupiter and Mars kind of square Saturn together. It might not be
Hmm.
exact, but like there's kind of a week of Jupiter and Mars squaring Saturn. And
That could be really good. Not for like for everything's different for everybody, so don't if it's not great, you didn't do anything wrong. But if it is landing somewhere in your chart related to like something bigger, it could really ground a lot of
yeah,
things.
it's interesting because we wouldn't normally consider a Jupiter, or excuse me, a Saturn Mars square as good, like
Well,
at all.
no, no,
um,
we had a lot of those in back during it wasn't during the pandemic.
well, there's always a fair amount of, I think there's at least one or two a year, depending on if Mars retrogrades. There's a lot of sort of super catastrophic ones that had involved Pluto during the
Mm,
pandemic.
that's right. That's right.
Um, Whereas this is involving Jupiter, right? So it's sort of this dynamic of like, we talked about it earlier in the year, but this idea of like Jupiter wants to expand and Saturn wants to constrict. So when Jupiter and Saturn square, it's kind of like this conversation of like, Jupiter's like, hey, we're going to do all these great things. We're going to build this. We're going to, this is the plan. It's going to be great. You know, it's boisterous. It's optimistic. It is full of life. It's ready to go, and then Saturn's kind of like the local administrator being like, do you have your permit? What are your plans? Like, no, he's going to sort of put the brakes on. So it can be frustrating, but it can also be positive because it can represent Saturn coming in to make something uh, more viable, if we play it the right way. But with Mars in the mix, it's just going to add a whole lot of extra energy and extra frustration
Sure.
because Mars and Jupiter, it's like Mars is going to light up that expansion and make it happen faster. But Mars square Saturn is like driving with the parking brake on. It's like trying to move forward and getting blocked. So, yeah, it might feel for a couple of weeks like you're building up to something important and then you get there and it's more complicated than it seems and there's more steps and um that could be frustrating, but all of it feels like weighted and important and like it could potentially um impact a long period of time, um depending upon where it's hitting your chart. So yeah, it's we're getting to a more serious time of the year. Not serious bad, but
Hmm.
productive, I think. um And yeah, so I think, in addition to the seriousness of the moment with Algol and Mars and Taurus, and Uranus, excuse me, Algol, Mars, and Uranus and Taurus, um, we're also, finishing up Cancer season. So I was kind of considering that in my analysis of what's happening in Taurus. I was like, the moon is actually going to sextile, um, not exact, but pretty close and pretty consistently over the next 10 days. The moon's going to sextile that Mars Uranus conjunction.
Hmm.
And a sextile is a soft aspect in astrology. We consider it a positive aspect. Um, in the sense that it's flowing and supportive. So the sun is going to support the flow of Mars Uranus energy, which might not be the best thing, you know. But if you are trying to funnel it into like intentional emotional work, the sun might kind of help you um, express and offload some of that fear, rage, anger um, that placement can generate. Um, and you know, I don't know. I I've been thinking a lot about Cancer as a sign, and we talked about this a little bit in the workshop
Mm-hmm.
on Saturday. Um, but in trying to kind of come up with like a really consistent interpretation of Cancer in charts, I landed on this idea that if the moon represents our needs, which I think it does, among other things, the moon represents the body, the mind, and the body mind connection, which is kind of why it has rulership over our emotions and our physical body. Um, but it also, the placement of the moon in our chart also points to kind of like the things we need to be emotionally secure, stable, fed, happy. Um, and Cancer, as the home of the moon or the sign of the moon, um, I think pretty consistently represents the container or the structure that makes us feel safe. Um, so it's different a little bit from our needs. It's not the actual substance of the need, but rather the kind of location where we might feel secure in receiving our needs, getting our needs met. So, say you have Cancer in the fourth house, and that fourth house is the fourth house is the house of home. You may be a kind of person who feels naturally safe in the home environment. You feel like that is where you want to retreat to when you need to, yeah, when you need to, uh, you know, recover or rest or whatever. If you have the moon, if you have Cancer in the ninth house, it might be that you feel really safe at church or in a temple or on the road or while traveling. Those kinds of physical places and experiences become the kind of container of your safety. Um, so I was thinking about that in the context of the sun sextiling um, Algol, right? And that brought up this question of like, okay, who do you feel safe and where do you feel safe expressing negative emotions? Um, do you feel safe
Mm-hmm.
expressing negative emotions? Because you know, if we all have to process all our emotions, right? And you know, it's sort of natural and destructive for us to avoid processing negative emotions, but we do it all the time, right? But these next couple of days might be a really good productive window to consider, okay, like how do I process my negative emotions, and how can I do that better, and what environment and what kind of relationships do I need to cultivate so that I can work through things like rage, like sadness, sorrow, feeling cut off from power, exercising power, like, um, yeah, I don't know. It was just an intuitive hit I kind of had today And it came up in a reading today, and I think it might be an interesting and productive thing for folks to ponder.
Sure. Yeah, and it is hard. We just don't have a ton of examples in our life. Um, I mean, as Western people, it's, kind of normal. I mean, even like on, our media, right? It's a lot of drama, it's a lot of yelling, it's a lot of
Yeah.
violence, it's a lot of avoidance behaviors. If you just kind of look at what we find fascinating and gripping in our storytelling,
Yeah.
um, a lot of it is centered around um, the main character's emotional journey that they have to go on being dealt with in pretty destructive ways. So, we don't have, if you do have someone, that you can kind of look to in your life, that tends to be very, very fortunate. A grandparent or a parent or someone who's a lot of influence on you. But I think it's one of these things that is worth uh looking up. Like, I wouldn't say that Google's a great place to find a lot of things, but and just in terms of like ideas on like Reddit or forums or lists of different ways that you can express anger in a healthy way, and you're not going to relate to all of them. Some of them you're going to be like, nah, so
Yeah.
so it's like one of them is like screaming into a pillow, and I'm like, that's not going to do anything for me. Like, there's nothing. That's never the kind of the impulse. Um, but uh like chopping wood, excellent for me. Like,
Mm.
that's actually, and I not running, not competitive sports.
No.
Do not like those things. Do not feel cathartic or good or anything but
Yeah.
kind of questioning the value of reality when I engage with those kind of things. Like, oh, why
Yeah.
are we like it doesn't make it makes me feel kind of sad. But, kind of more specific active things like cutting,
Yeah.
um, that makes me feel better. So, it's a nice time to explore um kind of the unique individual, your own unique individuality in a way that might not be as comfortable,
Right.
because part of it is acknowledging the presence of these things within us,
Yeah.
which is always
Yeah.
hard. But once you do that, then you can be like, oh, and I'm the kind of person that likes to do this with that. And that can be very freeing.
Yeah. It's kind of like the sun being in Cancer right now could kind of help you poke around and shine a spotlight on one of those tools. And
Hmm.
I was thinking of that a little bit earlier because I was thinking about how you have pointed out so many times in personal conversation on this podcast,
Every
that
time you start saying this, I'm like, oh no, what have I said?
no, that people, that most of us are punished as children for expressing
Hmm.
anger,
Yeah.
um, and it's almost like an epidemic
Oh yeah.
of this
Yeah.
in Western society. I mean, almost none of us escape it, and even when we try to break that cycle, it can be challenging. Like this morning, Avi was yelling at me, "Why are you mad at me for being angry?" I was like, "I'm not. I don't think. Maybe I am. Oh God, I'm so sorry." I was like, "I actually just want you to get dressed." Like, and I try really hard to be like a very conscientious parent, and I'm not perfect by any means. I've grown leaps and bounds in his 9 years, but I fail all the time, or I hope I would be better. But he just like he screamed that this morning. Why are you mad at me for being angry? And I was like, I don't know. Maybe because all goals. Like, I don't know.
I mean, but it's a good sign that he feels comfortable saying that to you
I
in a
know. I
moment
told
where you're
myself that
already
though.
angry. Like, in a
Yeah.
moment where you're in a kind of bit of a conflict, for him to still have the
I
freedom
know.
to say that is really good.
And I was like, wow, I'm glad that he can actually like articulate that.
Hmm.
That's pretty good. I did think that this morning when I was feeling bad. But yeah, I mean, it is like it's just really almost unconsciously indoctrinated in all of us that it's not
Yeah, that
okay.
it's not acceptable, that you shouldn't. Well, and also it's really hard not to, I think part of it is we're taught not to express our emotions, but from the time that we're really, really little. And then also that other people's emotions are our fault or our
Mm.
responsibility, or
Yep.
that um, especially if there's like a lack of safety involved, either because the person becomes violent or dysregulated. There's all these different ways that we take that on, which makes it easier for the cycle to become perpetuated because not only are we taught it's unacceptable for other people to express their feelings, but also we take it personally. So we have a lot of
Yeah.
incentive to shut it down as well. So we're like, don't you be angry. I didn't mean that.
Yeah.
I didn't, my intentions were,
Yeah.
good.
How dare
And
you be angry at me?
yeah, how dare you have
Yeah.
feelings? I've given you a good life, or, whatever
Yeah.
it is. Like it's very hard to kind of break out of that cycle. And obviously
Yeah.
there's those, kind of a lot of us in this generation that are fighting with our inner impulses to not do that anymore,
Yeah.
as opposed to, other I think of not everybody in prior generations, but it was even more common, I think, to do that completely unconsciously and to just feel like that was correct and
Yeah.
true and right and the right way to bring children up and the moral and ethical and positive for their life way to bring children up. So yeah, so we are stuck in a cycle as parents, but then also as individuals trying to relate to these things that
Yeah.
we have within us.
Yeah. It also creates a kind of like bottlehead around subjects that people feel are open season for their expression of righteous anger.
Yeah.
Like, it's almost like because we're not allowed to just be angry about normal things,
Mm-hmm.
everybody
You have to
feels,
you have to find something that you feel is
yeah.
worthy of your anger. Like,
And
yeah.
then those all become these like cultural hotspots that get like so overloaded with
Yeah.
anger and emotion and dysregulation that we can't even like have conversations with them or do
Right.
anything productive because
Yeah.
everyone is funneling all of their rage in these like specific locations because it
Because
has
they
to
need
come
because
out.
they need to feel validated, right,
Yeah.
in their feelings. And so they feel like, oh, I shouldn't, I've done everything I possibly can do, everything right. I'm not, and yet I still have these feelings inside of me for no reason. It must be because of this. And then,
Yeah.
you choose something, you grab onto it.
Oh
And it's
god, it's a
not as though,
nightmare.
and it's not as though you might also have an emotional reaction
Yeah.
to that thing. Like it's not like that's not real. It's just that it becomes kind of
Yeah.
exaggerated, and then oftentimes you feel as though letting go of the anger around that thing, especially if it's like righteous or ethically driven, that you shouldn't work around the anger. You shouldn't work with that anger
Yeah.
because you should be angry about that, and that's the correct thing to do. And I think it's really hard for people to imagine being fully engaged with certain things without having an extreme emotional charge around them. Like for
Right.
some people, it's so prevalent in all the things that they are very actively engaged with that they can't even, they just imagine it being kind of robotic or um,
Yeah.
uh, flat, I guess, or like, you don't care. Like they can't imagine both caring and being engaged and not having a big, surge of the emotion around it. So knowing that that's possible and that if you relinquish that anger and let go of it and work with it, that you won't stop caring,
Yeah.
is a good
Or
thing.
like allow anger is sort of like a nervous system
Hmm.
trigger or like an activation trigger, it can kind of like motivate us to do
Sure.
things.
Yeah.
Um And, expressing anger, letting anger maybe motivate you into action is one thing, but it actually probably, like, sustaining the rage isn't
Yeah, it's not good
necessarily
for your,
like the the thing that leads the action into the right direction necessarily always. Like,
it's
sometimes we have
hard.
to
Yeah.
regulate so we can actually do the thing we set out to do
Mhm.
productively. So yeah. um this is a it's an interesting couple of days. I mean, it's an interesting conjunction. I mean, um Mars will touch Algol, once every 2-ish years.
Hmm.
Uranus once every, I don't know, 80 years.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
so have Mars and Uranus ever conjoined on Algol before? Fuck if I know. I have no idea, but probably not in many hundreds or thousands of years.
I
So this
mean,
is definitely,
just sit now.
yeah.
I hope you'll look into that and write about what was going on in the
Yeah.
world at that moment in time, because it might have been something interesting if you can find it, if it is
Yeah.
in, recorded history. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. No, it is it's hard. And I'm not saying don't be angry, don't be angry about what's going on in the world or in something,
No,
or for,
yeah.
whatever it is. It's just
We're saying the opposite.
yeah,
Be
be
angry,
angry, find a
but
way,
don't.
find a way to express it that isn't holding you back or burning bridges or distracting you from other things that are important to you.
Yeah.
It's hard, which is hard. It's a hard thing. It's like the scene in Frozen 2 where she's trying to get the horse, the water spirit.
I don't remember Frozen 2. I watched it once in the theaters with
I've
Bobby.
seen that
Bobby didn't
movie
like it.
more than any other movie in my entire life, maybe. Just
Bobby
because I
did
have,
not like it.
oh yeah.
He was like, "Why is everybody angry?" I was like, "I got some notes
Oh
about that."
right. I forgot about that. Yeah. Yeah, he's got a thing about conflict in media, and it is a lot of like personal drama, people
Yeah.
being angry with each other. Yeah.
He's like got a little Libra moon. He just wants everybody to be happy and get along.
I know it's very sweet. It's like a little sweet rock star of friendship. Um,
He is a rock star of friendship. It's so
yeah.
cute.
But my daughter likes Frozen a lot, so I've seen it. But it's like this horse that's sort of like made of the water, and she's trying to get to an island, and she's gonna try to like freeze the a pathway for herself to get to
Mm-hmm.
this island. But this horse, it's like basically a wild stallion, but also in the water, just keeps like knocking her into the water and knocking her into the water, and she has to kind of figure out how to ride it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's just like a very Disney drama moment. She's gonna be okay.
They always survive.
They always survive, but she's under the water a lot and struggling and coughing, and then rises victorious riding the horse who takes her the rest of the way. So it's a nice way of thinking about, both the the kind of battle and the conflict that figuring out how to express negative emotions is going to bring up, but then also imagining the other side of it, being in a place where they are present with you, they're not gone, but there's a clarity, they're not holding you
Yeah.
back from moving forward. They might even be sort of in line or, moving your goal forward. Sometimes that can be, it's hard to find a balance with that too sometimes, but you know,
Right.
um, the range of experience. I was thinking about this recently because of the kind of music that I like. And I like a really wide range of genres. Like, I'm not really, I'm sure there are some that I don't like, but I'm pretty open to a lot of genres. But what I really seem to gravitate to is artists that are grappling with reality, like people that are not well adjusted, people that are really, struggling, obviously, to kind of make sense of this world and their place in this world and
Right.
what's right and the kind of injustices or the conflicts that are inherent in our existence. And I was like, yeah. And then I was like, and that's the kind of people I like hanging out with as well. It's also so so even though I know it's challenging to be the kind of person who's thinking about this, who's feeling these things, who's working on these things, who's trying to make sense of these things, it's hard, but it also makes you very interesting and it makes you likable. And a lot of times it makes you very trustworthy and it can make you very honorable. And it can make you very dignified. So just remember that as you go with it.
How do you struggle with reality?
As you struggle with reality.
Oh man. Um, I feel like there was something else I was gonna say about this, guys, but it's kind of lost me. I just got a notification that the moon just moved into Libra.
Hmm.
Um, so gonna encounter K2 soon. Um, so we all might feel a little bit loopy over the next day or so. But what is I looking for? I was looking for the next lunation. I wanted to highlight that for people. Okay, yes, it's on July 21st.
Okay.
So we talked about that last in the last podcast, but this is the second full moon that we're going to get in Capricorn.
Nice.
Um, so yeah, Dark Portal, big release, followed by a huge swell of busyness, action, um, sort of gravitas. The moment is going to gain some gravity,
Hmm.
which is kind of a weird thing to say because I wouldn't be surprised if in the next 10 days some very gravely serious things happen in the world. Um, and that will feel heavy for everybody. But in terms of like this grabbing a hold of the continuation of our personal stories and our personal journeys and sort of like momentum swelling around that for a lot of us. I think toward the end of the month we're going to start to feel that like filtering back in pretty heavy
Hmm.
in both good and challenging ways.
Hmm. We have on that day a trip scheduled that's going to
Oh,
be
the Grass
streamed.
Valley.
Yeah, we'll be together with
Mm-hmm.
Paige and a few other folks that we've been working with for a while now, and probably some other folks that are just going to be invited. But it's if you want to join us in that on that day, because we do have two things scheduled. We have the Longing for God meditation in the evening that everyone's welcome to, and it's free. And then a little bit earlier that you can sign up on through Paige's website. So if you want to join us on that day, it just happens to be one that we can all be together on.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was on that day. That's some really very good intuitive scheduling that Paige did because that is a that full moon I do think is going to ask us for a bigger than usual offering.
Hmm.
um like to take advantage of that moon I think would be to really uh let go of all things that are um standing in the way of your ability to step into your own authority. Um, of course, that's dramatic. No one's going to to be able to get rid of all of those things in one go. But if you can identify a couple of qualities or obstacles, or both either internally or externally, that are sort of impeding your access to your authority over your own life and sort of your path and where you're headed, those are some really those are some good things to offer up under this moon. And cha is a profound tool for getting
Mm-hmm.
rid of stuff. I mean, I personally have both um, intentionally used it as a tool to get rid of obstacles and have seen it sort of strip away obstacles slowly just by showing up to
Mm-hmm.
them regularly. And I had that incredible experience and opportunity to do it with Paige in Nepal about 6 months ago, 7 months ago now.
And that
Um,
was with a whole
yeah,
monastery, right? So a lot of people doing chill.
yeah, it was a
And then,
monastery nunnery.
oh, okay.
So it was both monks and nuns were present in this location, but the cha was performed by I think like 70 nuns. Yeah, it was like the most supercharged obstacle removal ceremony I have ever, or maybe will ever, take part in my whole life. So yeah, it was really profound, and it was just an incredible. It was incredible luck that we were there at the same time because we didn't plan the trips together. I just happened to be in Kathmandu at the same time as Paige, and I got to go with her crew to this ceremony, and it was profound and intense and really set the stage for the whole trip because I think it was the first like 7 days I was there, and then I had
Mm-hmm.
like 3 weeks after. It was almost as if that ceremony like wiped clean as many obstacles as I was capable of ridding myself of, even though I didn't do it. It's the way I mean, you could probably describe it better, but it's almost like, you know, the traumas like create the stage or the setting and do the rituals and the prayers for these much these incredible beings to kind of come in and work on you and help you release obstacles, so you're not really doing it yourself. You're doing
Mm-hmm.
it through the grace of these beings that are devoted to helping us. And then that's why, it's so profound and so effective, because you can bring the intention, but then you get all this help to let go of things you can't let go of on your own.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I found it to be extremely helpful, and it has helped me in my spiritual practice during times when I was like suffering so much because I could not let go of certain obstacles. And I have felt both like immediate relief from these ceremonies and then also like
Mm-hmm.
cumulative long-term relief. So Paige is really fantastic, so talented, so devoted, and Tess helps, like is present, sort of. I don't want to say like supercharging, that's not the right word, but you're kind of, I don't know. It seems like you're kind of helping, even make it more effective by being helping people identify the things to let go of and helping the process go more smoothly.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what I do is try to protect Paige in the space,
Mm-hmm.
um, more than anything. But I do sometimes things come up, and I'm like, oh, okay, we can, move with that a little bit. But yeah, it's one of these examples of a mode. It's hard to call it a modality, but when you have a modality or a ceremony with a really strong container,
Mm-hmm.
that's what makes it, it's a really important part of its efficacy. So, there are a lot of individuals and ways of doing non-touching, non-material healing work.
Right.
But this is one where it's got such a strong foundation behind it, that involves a lot of very, very accomplished people, who are still kind of present for it. And I guess it's like the specificity of the prayers and of the actions and of the offerings.
Mm-hmm.
It's, Paige pours the intention into it in so many very, very, very specific ways that are then reinforced. And so that is one of the reasons that this is so effective and yet so smooth, right? So oftentimes you don't really have to go through like the turmoil of like healing and feeling like, oh, I got to reconfigure myself and
Yeah.
repair myself. It's like that's built into the whole thing.
Right.
Um, so it is really, really nice. And it's also, there are different ones for different things. And I'm not a CHA practitioner or an expert or a scholar, so I don't want to speak about it. Anything I say will be incomplete, but there is often a component where you are offering up your fear.
Mm-hmm.
And fear is said to be an affliction that affects many, many different parts of our experience in our life. So you're going to kind of the root of a lot of the suffering that you experience, which is fear, and you're offering it up in the spirit of compassion and uplifting others. Um, and part of that is the idea of like feeding the beings in the lower realms. Um, because for them, the worst parts of yourself and the worst of your experience is still something that is a benefit to them, and something that can uplift them and transcend, and help them transcend their condition. So not only are you kind of motivated by your own healing and your own freedom and your own alleviating your suffering, you're also motivated by um, sharing space with things that maybe seem undesirable or scary and having the courage to do so, and also wanting to benefit them and also wanting to include them in something important. So it's really, really lovely, really beautiful tradition. And again, we're just so lucky that we have a friend who does them,
It's
who
crazy.
that we get to go sit with
Yeah.
regularly, because it's a hard skill to learn, and it's also um, challenging to find a path where you'll be given permission, from a
Yeah.
lineage to perform it. So yeah, so it's a fairly rare thing,
Yeah.
and we get to go, and everyone's invited. She does it on Zoom once a month.
Yeah. So I think because you can always find the signups on Swanee's website in our currents, but I'll put the CHA that we're all going to be at together on the 21st in the episode notes, so that if you guys want to sign up for it, you can. It's just on Zoom. You just have to be present for it, and best case scenario, you show up with an idea of kind of what you hope to release, what you hope to
Yeah.
let go of, offer up your obstacles. And it can be a really, really nice tool to support the full moon this
Mm-hmm.
month. And I'll also put in the episode notes the sign up for the death meditation, which Paige is also doing. So this episode is
Page episode.
Paige, you're all over it. um, yeah, we very much love and trust this person and her skill set. So yeah, if either of those offerings sound like they would benefit you, please come.
Mhm.
I am going to start posting some writing on the Substack. You will get that kind of like in a separate newsletter if you're already our patron or our subscriber. Um, and that's going to be kind of more of like a personal nature. But I'm also developing like an offering around that. Want to kind of probably launch it in like September. That's going to be about like helping folks write about their own life and write about their kind of stories as it relates to different transits and what's present in the sky. So that's coming up. If you get some writing in your inbox, if you read it and enjoy it, please do. If you want to opt out of that offering, you can as well. So it'll be like related, but also separate from the sort of the notifications that come out related to the podcast. So yeah, I'm excited for that too. And Tess, do you have anything else to add?
I don't think so. We did a lot. We covered, you're like, what are we going to talk about? Everything. Mostly Paige.
I know. Oh God, I talk too much.
No. That's not what I meant at all.
No, I know. I feel like I always think that I don't know what to say, and then, oh God, so many words come out. But hopefully some of them are helpful and enjoyable. And we love you guys. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank
and
you.
We'll catch you. We'll probably get one more episode in before we take off.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll catch you guys next week.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.